Welcome to How to Make Your Resume Stand Out. My name is Liz Herrera, and I'm the Associate Director of SPH Career Services. Before we get started, if you can please have a copy of your resume or CV in front of you and a notebook to take some notes. Of course, you can pause the presentation at any point, but I will walk you through the presentation briefly to help you get started or to help you enhance your current resume. Now, before even starting from the beginning, what I always like to recommend students and job seekers, I think in our professional world, I think we should have a master resume. So, what I like to call your base resume. This document is for your eyes only. So, I always recommend that you have a document that outlines and lists all of your experiences. I think that over the years, we acquire new skills, we're involved in a variety of things, and then when it gets down to writing a resume, we tend to forget all of the amazing and great things that we've done in our career and in our involvement in a variety of things. So I would just kind of have a running list of different experiences so that you don't forget. So new training, certifications, honors, awards, publications. So just have that running list, and it'll be helpful as you go back to tailor your resume. So that's a perfect segue into our session here. Oftentimes people will come to my office or people want me to review their resume, but it's challenging to be able to just provide general feedback because every resume should be tailored to a specific audience. You have a versatile background, so your skills and qualifications are going to apply to a variety of settings. So you have to ensure that you are creating a document that reflects the experience and the skills provided your intended audience. So my very first question when I work with individuals is, well, what is the goal of your resume? Are you focusing on a resume for a scholarship? Are you looking into fellowships? Or maybe you're applying to be on a leadership board, an alumni board, or whatever the case. You need to know what is the focus because that's going to help you really tailor that resume. Again, well, what is your brand? I work with individuals who have various brands. Either they're focusing more on research focused type of positions, or maybe more community focused, or they have the creative background, and that's what they want to emphasize on. So depending on what you are seeking, the type of opportunity, you need to make sure that your resume is branded in that way. And essentially, what is your professional story? What is it that you want your intended audience to see and know about you within 10 seconds? Which I understand that can be a very challenging thing to do, but there are strategies in going about that. So you have your resume in front of you. What I want you to do is take a look at your experience. I want you to highlight or underline statements that show your reader your accomplishments and how you have added value. Okay? Because a lot of times I look at resumes and they're very function based. Almost sounds like a job, it reads like a job posting or a job description. How are you different from your responsibilities? What have you brought to your role? So employers want to see that you are someone that goes above and beyond. And many times we tend to leave those things out of our resume, and that's what I've also noticed with a lot of our students and job seekers, is that people tend to leave the good stuff out. So I want you to really look at your resume and think, okay, am I really showing the value that I brought into my my field experience or my graduate assistantship, my research assistantship? How did I make a difference? So if you're having a difficult time identifying these things on your resume, well, that just means that we have to, enhance what you currently have. So I want you to take a moment and review what you have. Okay, so as you are developing your resume, again, you are tailoring it to a particular industry or type of role. Research some of the terminology that is used in the profession. you always want to mirror that language. So maybe an organization uses clients or patients, community members, stakeholders, partners. Uh, what is the jargon or the language that is mostly used for maybe a particular organization that makes a huge difference? You want to ensure that you are embedding that terminology into your resume, and of course, the job posting is very helpful because they have the keywords. And a lot of times when I'm looking at job postings, they tend to repeat certain keywords. So if you see that, that should be a clue that you want to make sure that you're including some of these keywords and this information on your resume as well as the cover letter. So the next thing is definitely taking inventory of your experience, and I think this would be helpful as you're working on your base master resume. But this is also helpful to kind of think about your experience as it relates to what you want to do. And I think a lot of times people tend to leave things out that can help reinforce that you are qualified. So sometimes I see individuals that don't have a ton of work experience in the field, but during the program, they've gained relevant skills through maybe unpaid experiences. So don't undervalue those non-paid experiences. So look at your work experience, non-paid, your field experience. For many individuals, that may be the most pertinent experience. So that's something that maybe you want to lead with on your resume. Any special course projects. To my understanding, in a lot of these courses, there are projects that where you are using a lot of the skills that are valuable to employers, especially the quantitative skills. You know, what are some of those technical skills that you're using? Statistical software, all kinds of different skill sets that you've developed and acquired through your academic training. Try to list those out because I'm sure that you have used them in those special course projects. So thinking about those transferable skills, activities, involvement in committees. I see people being involved in a number of leadership roles. Again, don't underestimate or undervalue those experiences. Maybe you're applying for something where they want someone with budget experience. If you are a treasurer or you're handling money, those are things that you can certainly include. Languages, again, technical skills. And I know that, you know, in today's day and age that we all should know how to use Microsoft Office Suite, but you'd be surprised. You know, some people have the basic skills, but those are things that employers are still asking for in this job posting. So if they're looking for a particular proficiency, make sure that you include that you are proficient, if that is the case, of course. Any volunteer work that you have, any publications, leadership experience, conferences. So not just that you attended a conference, but that you presented at a conference or a poster presentation, perhaps. So these are just some examples of things that you can start thinking about as you start further developing your resume. Again, reflecting on your experience, think about the various roles that you've had. What have been some of your major achievements, your accomplishments? What are you most proud of? Think about the feedback that you've received in your roles. Feedback from supervisors, feedback from colleagues. How do you make an impact, or how have you made an impact, or what is your role? Are you that person that people typically go to because you are a problem solver? Are you that person that people go to because you know how to make things more efficient? Maybe you are the kind of person that is able to establish relationships, connect with people, so they send you out to some of the community events because they know that you have a way to establish rapport. Or are you that person that, you know, people seek out because you are quick to learn a new skill, or maybe you're a techie, or maybe you have the creative side. So really start paying attention to that. What is it that people go to you? Those are things that you need to start, you know, really reflecting on as you tighten up your resume. Again, we talked about special projects and any other unique skills that you bring to an organization. So when you're writing out your resume, everyone's resume looks different. Now, of course, the things that you're going to have in common are your contact information. Now, you don't have to put your exact home address as long as you have city, state, zip code. That should be sufficient. Your email address, a professional email, and your LinkedIn URL if your LinkedIn is up to date, of course. Um, and then you want to have an introductory statement, which we're going to go into in the next few slides. So having some type of summary of qualifications, a career profile, not an objective. So that is no longer a thing. You do not want to have an objective on your resume because it's more about what you bring to the table, what you have to offer. And then, of course, you would have your education. So if you're currently in a program, you definitely want to lead with education, or it should be at the top of your resume. But as you start getting more experience, or if you do have a lot of relevant experience, then you can put your education at the very end. But again, that depends. Then you can have your work experience, possibly professional development, awards, training, certifications, any skills. You can include leadership, presentations, and publications. So again, these are just some ideas, and each category can vary depending on what it is that you want to highlight and that you want to make prominent on your resume. So kind of going back to that branding statement, all of these are just different ways of presenting it. So some people will call it a career profile or a summary of qualifications. So you can pick and choose what you want to title it. But basically, this is just a 2 to 3 sentence statement where you let the reader know what is your background, but how it relates to your to the position. So if they're looking for someone who has strong background writing grants and working in the community, and you are a community health sciences division, so you can say, Master of Public Health candidate with a focus in community health sciences, 2+ years experience in grant writing and working for nonprofit organizations within South Side of Chicago. Again, depending on your audience, or that you have maybe a number of years working with particular populations. Maybe they're looking for someone who is bilingual or multilingual with ability to work with diverse populations, and that has been your experience. So that's something that you want to highlight at the top. So whatever it is that the job posting is asking for, and you have that background, the profile is a great place to include that. If you have more experience, you can actually start with a very short snapshot, 1 to 2 lines, but then you can also have some bullet points highlighting some of your career accomplishments. So if they're looking for someone with, maybe a number of years working with certain populations, or experience working in healthcare settings, or someone with certain type of certifications or skills, the career highlights can definitely serve in that capacity. So if it's 3+ years working for community-based organizations, or 2 to 3 years experience working within healthcare settings as a clinician, and maybe you can say received training in XYZ, again depending on what the employer is looking for. So this is your opportunity to really brand and include all the relevant things that they're looking for that you have right at the top, so they want to keep reading. Now, if you don't have a ton of skills in that area, you can very well include a core competency section. So this is where you would add some of the skills that maybe you're learning in your program. So whether it be basic statistics, introduction to SAS, or SPSS. So if you have, maybe GIS, Adobe, Illustrator, whatever the case may be, if you're still learning, but these are some core competencies, that would be a great area to include that. Or if you feel more comfortable saying that these are your areas of expertise, you can certainly do that. So now you have your introductory statement, maybe some highlights, or not. You can just lead with the profile, education, areas of expertise or skills. So you want to put the good stuff at the very top. Example. So let's say you're applying to a health education related position, and they want somebody with experience in partnership development. So you can have that tagline at the very top. And then here's some bullet points, right? So certified health educator of 5 years, deliver culturally competent health education workshops at community-based organizations to help address health issues. So for this example, let's imagine that they are looking for someone that has experience training diverse audiences, someone that is bilingual, someone that knows the topic of diabetes, someone that has experience cultivating relationships. So in this case, this person has included the necessary requirements and has outlined them in this profile. So now this one is a little more of a narrative. So in this case, it's a Master of Public Health candidate in Community Health Sciences with a focus in nutrition. Strong background conducting focus groups and performing community outreach within underserved communities. Developed a 10-week fitness and nutrition program implemented at 3 community centers. So this is very, very focused. So this is not a resume that you would be using, to distribute at a general job fair or just to submit to a variety of audiences. So this one is very specific, which all of your resumes should be. But I wanted to share this example. Again, you always want to tailor your resume. You want to make sure that you're highlighting your strengths and relevant points. Now, the other thing is that you also want to quantify whenever possible. So using numbers, percentages, and accomplishments. You want to begin your statements with powerful action verbs. So again, I want you to take a look at your resume and look at how each of your bullet points begin. If they do not begin with a strong action verb, then you want to go in and replace it. And we'll continue talking about that too. And again, showing your contributions, how you... These are some overused words and phrases. So if you have this on your resume, you may want to find ways to replace some of these things. So these are some cliches that recruiters see over and over. I myself have seen them over and again. So things like proven ability to, or that you're a team player, or that you're able to exceed in fast-paced environments. So although all of these things are important, employers do want to hire, people that are team players. And it'll say that in the job posting, right? That they're looking for someone who is a team player. There are ways to showcase that. So when you're including things in your bullet points, you can say collaborated with a 5-member team in creating a strategy to XYZ. So you're showcasing your ability to work in a team. Or maybe led a team of 15 to successfully implement a program for, again, XYZ. So there's ways to showcase that you have these soft skills without claiming them, because anyone can claim to have some of these skills, but if you show through some type of tangible example, that really reinforces what your message. So again, you don't want to have things like results oriented, like I'd want to see the results. What does that mean? Where have you made that impact? So I always say, do these look familiar? Because I see these all the time. I'm sure I was guilty of some of these, or probably still am, but responsible for. Just because you were responsible for it doesn't mean that you actually did it, right? So I want you to replace that statement with something that you did, that you take ownership. So many times when I'm reviewing a resume and I'm having a conversation with someone, it says, oh, you were responsible for working the front office at a medical center. And after having conversation, the truth is that the person oversaw and managed all front desk logistics and streamlining patient intake. So there's a lot more than just being responsible for. So if you are overseeing something or managing a project, don't undersell it by saying that you're responsible for it. And then you want to cut to the chase. So you don't have to say duties included. Start with that action verb. Again, if you are working with someone, maybe you are doing a research assistantship, or you're working with, your supervisor. Sure, you're helping in the process, or you're assisting, but in what capacity? So maybe you are contributing to XYZ project, or contributed by writing literature reviews for, XYZ. So really show what you did as opposed to saying that you're assisting. I always like to point out HIPAA, because everyone for some reason misspells this word. So it's two A's, not two P's. A very, very common mistake that I find all the time. And then you don't need to include a hobby section. And try to stay away from using templates. So what employers want to see are accomplishment statements, right? So again, written proof of what you've already accomplished, a success story, and again, here are some other examples. So here we have someone that has, responsible for developing a report to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Okay, well, that tells me that you were responsible for developing this document. But if you write something more along the lines of developed and published 300-page report to inform the Secretary of Health and Human Services on policies governing electronic exchange of protected health information, that quantifier really makes a difference. Or submitted monthly data on state and federal contracts. So that's very general. Save $10K annually by streamlining processes for submitting monthly data on state and federal contracts. So lead with the impact whenever possible. Here are a few more. So, selected to write and implement 50K grant proposal, standardized process and deliver trainings to 25 patients, develop strategic relationships with key healthcare system providers. So even just that first line stands out to me where I want to keep reading. So again, a few examples for you to think about. So again, oftentimes I find that people tend to go with more of the passive statements, and I understand it's challenging to really think of yourself and okay, this is what I've brought to the organization, this is what I've done. So this is not a time to be modest and humble about your experiences. You want to take ownership of that, and that's the way that you make your resume stand out. So replacing some of these passive verbs like gave training classes, conducted 25 plus training classes on, worked on and maintained inventory, developed a first time inventory system that increased efficiency. One of the things that I always find, especially with internships, is that students develop, initiate, create, design things that the organization probably did not have the time to do before. So if you worked on something that help the organization improve something, those are things that you really want to think about. Things that you did that were not asked of you, that you did go above and beyond. How did you make their life easier? And employers want to see that because that means that you're going to do the same thing in that future role. Again, work with parents on a community project. Develop a strong partnership with parents, making them an integral part of the community program. Answered patient questions. Maybe you problem solved, troubleshot issues, wrote curriculum, designed and developed adolescent health curriculum for implementation at 3 Chicago public schools. So I imagine that you can see the difference. So I challenge you to go back and look at your resume and how can you make your statements more impactful. Okay, so just a few additional tips. You want to keep your resume 1 to 2 pages. It is okay to have a 2-page resume. I always tell individuals that if you want to keep your pertinent, more significant experience on the first page, because that's what employers are looking for. They want to know your credentials, your skills, and relevant experience. Now, many of you have extensive experience that I feel that may be relevant and important for your employer to know. So if you are involved in community service, volunteer work, or other things that you feel really tell your story and where you're coming from, and kind of backing up why you're applying for that position, by all means include it. But if you have experiences that are old, or they have nothing to do with public health or with that demonstrate any skills that are relevant, then keep that on your master resume, and it may not be for your intended audience. But when I talk to employers, I'm going to tell you that over 90% of them say that a 2-page resume is okay, but it can vary by industry. Prioritize bullet points. Lead with the most impactful bullet points first. Assume that they're only reading the first 2 bullets. Keep your resume organized and consistent. Avoid using any type of distracting templates. Try to avoid using any of those word templates that you're seeing now. I'm seeing a lot of graphics and boxes and infographics. Keep your resume simple. Yes, it should stand out. You can use a little color, maybe a dark blue, but that is not the purpose of your resume. You are not in the industry unless you are applying for something that's more in the graphic design or creative industry, then by all means. But for the majority of the positions that I'm seeing public health professionals acquiring, the graphics are not necessary. So keep it simple. And also, there are many employers that don't want you to use a resume that's too complicated with boxes and all kinds of features on there. Keep it simple for the applicant tracking system. So avoid headers as well. Some applicant tracking systems don't pick up on the headers. So keep everything on the Word document. Avoid underlining. Include enough white space. Again, I would rather see a 2-page resume that is spaced out than a 1-page 9-point font, tiny margins, everything, single spaced. I don't think anyone wants to read that. So make sure that it flows. You can use a variety of fonts. You can use Calibri, Cambria. You can use Tahoma. I've been hearing a lot the Time New Roman is a little bit outdated, but it's still acceptable. But again, keeping it between 11-point font, again, depending on what font you're using. Do not use a photo. Keep that for LinkedIn. Proofread for errors. I think that it's very human to overlook certain things, especially when it's your own document. So make sure that several people take a look at your resume. Avoid I or my. And always have a PDF version. I always like to submit, my resume when people ask for it, both Word or a PDF. I think that's always helpful. So overall, these are just some basic tips to help you get started on the resume. The SPH Career Services website, where you can find resume tools. So some sample resumes. Action verbs to help you enhance some of those bullet points, and other resources. But you are also welcome to make an appointment with the Career Services office. We are available Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So let us know when you're available, and we can definitely take a look at your resume. It's always helpful when you have a target goal in mind, because we can help you strategize on how to customize for the intended audience. Okay, well, thank you for listening, and I hope that you found this helpful.